I just want to read for you this poignant piece of history that is Anwar Sadat and there's Menachem Begin. As you're looking at this, I'm just going to read the post that our CEO and founder put up on social media pages. He said, Egyptian President Mohammed Anwar al-Sadat is the man who joined the Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin in forging peace between Israel and Egypt in 1981. Egyptian/African leaders bringing gifts to Zion, leading the nations to Jerusalem was foretold in Psalm 68, verse 31, among other Hebrew scriptures. Sadat served as the vice president to the premier Gamal Nasser, one of the architects of the 1967 Arab attack against Israel, or the Six-Day War. With an Egyptian father and a Sudanese mother, Sadat's dark skin made him stand out to Westerners who had only seen light-skinned Arabs. As a child, I remember my mother saying, Egypt's president is a black man. NRR news editor Suni M. Khalid reported for Egypt for 3 years and stated that more than a few Egyptian women, for example, told me that they disliked the dark-skinned former President Anwar Sadat. Ridiculed for years, Nasser's black poodle, they called him, they insisted did not look Egyptian enough. For too many Egyptians, sub-Saharan Africa is a stereotypical exotic land of thick jungles and masses of poor, starving, and black-skinned savages. Ironically, a little more than a generation ago, Cairo was the nerve center of the continent's liberation movement. Today, the state-controlled media devotes scant attention to the affairs of the continent below the Sahara. Even the occasional visit by a head of state from sub-Saharan Africa is greeted with smiles by snickering Egyptian government officials, especially when African visitors choose to wear their national dress. Sub-Saharan Africans who have fled as refugees to Egypt from Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea are routinely targeted for periodic security roundups in Cairo. In December 2005, Egyptian riot police brutally attacked a camp of Sudanese refugees in Cairo who were protesting their treatment. In front of TV cameras, at least 28 and as many as 100 refugees were killed, and hundreds of others were injured, arrested, imprisoned, or deported. There was little public protest. I'm bringing this up for a few different reasons. There's obvious hypocrisy of the Jew haters. They will say that what we were talking about before, Israel's sterilizing Ethiopia. Remember that? The one story that has been debunked, they still continue to ride on that thing year in and year out. But the inherent and very blatant racism in the Arab countries against the president of Egypt because he was too dark-skinned. They called him Nasser's poodle, his little black poodle. I told the story before, but in 2009, that summer, my first time traveling overseas, and I went to Egypt. I was in Cairo with a college Christian group, Global Urban Trek. And I remember I went to Egypt and I really was just learning about the world. One of our main jobs there was to teach English to the Sudanese refugees. Some of the things that we were told by our leader, it's not safe to just parade around your Christianity in a place like this. There are a lot of Coptics here. You might see them having cross tattooed on their wrists. If they ask you if you're Christian, they might ask you in a very discreet way, like maybe pointing to the wrist or something like that. But they try to keep a low profile. Those are the Coptic Christians that were slaughtered during the Arab Spring. And the Sudanese refugees also. They were living separately. When we would get on our buses and meet up somewhere in a town square, there were pretty much no Sudanese people in like the areas where most people were. The Sudanese were refugees and they lived on the outskirts and they stayed there. They were discriminated against. I saw a couple of incidents where I was like, whoa, this is the culture of Islam. This is the Arab culture, right? Which is why former Black Panther and the late Eldridge Cleaver, he didn't even go to Israel to become a Zionist. He went to Algeria. He was in Algiers and he got to see the slavery and the racism up close. And his eyes were open and he said, wow. He said, these people, they're more racist than the white folks back at home. This was in the 60s. Whether you're talking about anyone who pretends to care about justice, this is now the left and the right. Why do they never say anything about Arabs oppressing Black people? Why do they never say anything about the fact that Arabs owned Black slaves by the millions across the African continent? Why? One, it's not politically correct to do that. For people on the right, it's not about political correctness. Their agenda, they hate Jews, right? So their thing is, let's harp on an old story. No country is perfect, but this goes to show you just what kind of society Israel is. Because the only stories that these people can find are old. One of the things that people share a lot, the haters, I should say, will post something and they'll go, is this the Israel that you support? And it's an article about a chief rabbi referring to Black Jews or Black people in Israel as monkeys. That story was published by Times of Israel. An Israeli paper published a story, and in the story, you have other rabbis and other chief rabbis saying, no, we condemn that. Yet you have these people posting this and going, see, this is what Israel thinks of you. Click on the link, idiot. Look at the date stamp on that. It's been years. So those people will harp on an old story of one racist incident that all the other Israelis condemn, one racist incident that the Israeli newspaper will report on themselves, but they won't say anything about slavery on the African continent. Not figuratively, not the Colin Kaepernick kind of I'm a slave working for the NFL. No, I'm talking about literally working for nothing, endlessly, being beaten if you don't address your master the right way, having your sons and daughters taken from you. That type of slavery. Nope. Let's talk about, Ethiopian sterilization again, even though we know it didn't actually happen. Why? It's safe and I hate Jews. So there's the hypocrisy, but then there's also the spiritual current of Jew hatred. It's a spiritual thing. You might have gotten into it for the money, but man, you will get swept up in that thing so fast because it is a current. It is a current. It is a current that Pharaoh got into. It's a current that Hitler got into. It's a current that the Romans, Antiochus, Epiphanes, the moment that you step into that current, no matter what your reasons are, you will get sucked all the way in. And then when you do that, it's not just the Jews that suffer for it, but it's people who actually need your help.